So we're about 3 weeks, a little bit less than 3 weeks, or exactly 3 weeks actually today, away from Gimel Tammuz, the Rebbe's Yartzeit, Yom Hilula, and to prepare for that day, so it's appropriate that we learn one of the Rebbe's Mamarim, and specifically the Maimer we're going to learn now, and hopefully be able to finish before Gimel Tammuz, is the Maimer Va'ata Tetzaveh. This Maimer is the last Maimer that the Rebbe edited before he fell ill, and so to this day, this is the last Maimer we had received edited, ready for publication, for study from the Rebbe, just 2 short weeks before Chav Zayin Adar, and so it's the Maimer that, based on what we had seen by the Rebbe, where he referred to the last Maimer of the previous Rebbe, the Basi Ligani from 1950, that the previous Rebbe had published to be studied on the day that he would actually pass away. And the Rebbe said that this is essentially his legacy Maimer, his last will and testament for his generation, for the Chassidim. And as we learned earlier this year, we learned a Basi Ligani, when the Rebbe's Mamarim based on it was a Maimer that the Rebbe would return to year after year on that anniversary of the Frierdiker Rebbe's passing, to glean new insights. And so, following taking the Rebbe's cue, we Chassidim studied the Maimer Va'ata Tetzaveh, the last Maimer we had received from the Rebbe. You can call it the legacy Maimer. And in it, hopefully we can find the pertinent information, the message that the Rebbe has for us, for what it means to be Chassidim and to carry the torch and to continue his work after Gimel Tammuz. So the Maimer was actually said on Shabbos Yud Adar Rishon in 1981. The Rebbe delivered the Maimer then, and it was prepared for publication for Purim Katan, to come up Purim Katan for the 14th of Adar, the first Adar, in 1992. Now, the way it would work is that the Rebbe would say a Maimer during the Farbrengen or other occasions, and then the Maimer would obviously be drafted by the Chassidim that listened. The oral scribes would then sit and actually transcribe the Maimer, and they'd write up a draft of it. And then, of the many Mamarim that the Rebbe had said, a number of them were then, a minority of them, but a significant amount of them were then submitted to the Rebbe for review and for editing. Those Mamarim, for the most part, take on a different form and style than the way they were said by the Rebbe originally. For the most part, that was something that the Rebbe had guided the writers in how to prepare the Maimer. And so this Maimer Va'ata Tetzaveh, which was said in 1981, was then edited by the Rebbe, the last Maimer the Rebbe would edit to this point in 1992. In addition to it being the last Maimer the Rebbe had edited up to this point, it's also significant that the Rebbe actually distributed a copy of this Maimer to Chassidim on that anniversary, on Purim Katan, Tafshin Nun Beis. In 1992, the Rebbe actually distributed a copy of this Maimer to the Chassidim along with some money for charity, for them to give to charity. So that's a little background on the Maimer and why we're going to study it. Since it's a Purim Katan Maimer, so the Maimer is going to relate to Purim. It's also going to relate to Parshas Tetzaveh, which is a parsha in the book of Exodus and Shemais. We're actually now in the beginning of the book of Numbers. So we're a book and a half past that this time of year. So where the Maimer will seem a little bit off season in terms of some of the subject matter, but really the seasonal nature of it and the seasonal vibe of it, and is just as in all Mamarim, is really just the key to get into the deeper subject matter and the meat of the Maimer. And so we're going to be learning a little bit about Purim, but really we're going to try to focus on the deeper meaning beyond just the seasonal relevance. And also, another thing about this Maimer is that like many of the Rebbe's Mamarim, it is very much based and rooted on a Maimer of the previous Rebbe. We'll talk about it in a moment, which Maimer. And the Rebbe gets to a certain point, he works his way through this Maimer based on a close analysis of the structure of the previous Rebbe's Maimer. So this Maimer shifts constantly back and forth into the previous Rebbe's Maimer. It could get a little complex and technical, but the point is, we're trying to get to a certain point that the Rebbe is working towards, but anchoring it and rooting it, basing it firmly in the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, and even in the structure and the order in which the Friedrich Rebbe brings his points in his Maimer. So it gets a little technical there, but let's just try and stay focused and study. Okay. So let's start. Va'ata Tetzaveh. You can follow along. There's we have to really post a link to the text maybe, but I sent one to Chili. Maybe Chili, if he's tuned in, can post that link onto the comments. But there's also Kahas published this Maimer in English as well, with translation and commentary. So Nurturing Faith, you can follow along in the Nurturing Faith as well. We're going to learn it in just the original Hebrew text. Okay, in the Nurturing Faith, we're going to start chapter 1. That's, where is that here? That would be on page 27 in the Chassidic Heritage series. Okay. Va'ata tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'ikro elecha Shem en zay yizach kasis l'moyer lahalis nertamid. The verse says, Va'ata, you, tetzaveh b'nei Yisrael, you shall command the Jewish people. V'ikro elecha, they shall bring to you Shem en zayis, olive oil, zach, that is pure, kasis, that was crushed l'moyer, to illuminate, for illumination, lahalis ner tamid, to bring up as an everlasting flame. There's a bit of a connection to Parshas Ba'aleischa, Lahalis Ner Tamid, but let's move on. Okay, so v'yeduim hadiyukim bazeh. So there are questions on this verse, the analysis of this verse that is brought in many discourses of the Rebbe's predecessors. That the first one is the B'chol HaTzivuim Shebetorah Nemar Tzaveh b'nei Yisrael v'kayetze bazeh. The Torah is full of commandments. God commanding, instructing Moshe to command the people, and the general term that's used, the term that's usually used, is the term tzav, tzaves b'nei Yisrael, to command the people. And here, though, the verse changes from that normal language and says, "Va'ata tetzaveh, you shall command." Now, this idea, it's not just semantics. It's not just, why in one place does it say tzav and here it says tetzaveh? Why does it change the words that it uses? But there's also a meaningful difference between them as well. Ullah Haisif Rebbe adds that this question is not merely an aesthetic on the style of the terms, but the hadiyuk mashakasav at tetzaveh hulayrak b'haloshin al gam b'teichen. It's not just a question of language; it's also a question of meaning. The loshin va'ata tetzaveh mashma sheMoshe hu hamitzaveh. When it says va'ata tetzaveh, you shall command, the implication is that who's the commander in this instance? It's Moshe. That God instructs Moshe to command. So who's the commander? Is Moshe. V'tzarech lahavin. We have to understand that Moshe, who ashliach limsar l'Yisrael tzivah HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe is not a commander. Moshe is merely a messenger to pass on God's command to the people. The lamanemer v'ata tetzaveh, and why would it use the term v'ata tetzaveh? So usually it says tzav, and here it says v'ata tetzaveh. And that question is not just why is there a different term used, but also that when we say tzav, that's more appropriate, because tzav means God says, I want you to command them on my behalf. I'm telling you what to command them on my behalf, how to convey my message. But here, when it says v'ata tetzaveh, you shall command, it seems the implication at least is that Moshe is the commander. So there's a difference also in meaning. That's question number one. Gam tzarich lahavin. Also we have to understand, why does it say v'ikro elecha, they should bring to you? That you command the people to bring to you. Sheyuviu Hashem el Moshe elecha, that they should bring the oil that they're going to prepare to Moshe. Who's the one who actually kindled the menorah? Aaron. So who's the one who needed the oil? Aaron, the high priest. So why would they need to bring the oil to Moshe? So the command here is to prepare special oil for the menorah. Why does the verse tell us that they should bring the oil to Moshe? What's the significance of bringing it to Moshe? I mean, that doesn't need to say anything altogether. Just say prepare the oil for the menorah. But if it's going to tell us who to bring it to, then it should say at least to Aaron. He's the one who's going to make use of it. So that's question number two. A third question, Gam tzarich lahavin mashakasav geimer shemen geimer kasas lamoyer. The l'chayr avalei lamemer shemen lahoyer. So we translate the end of the verse here, or the middle here, kasas lamoyer. We translate it that the oil, the olives, are crushed for illumination. But a literal translation of the word lamoyer, ma'er is a source of light. So it would translate as the luminary, crushed to be a luminary. What does that exactly mean? Also, it's a little strange. The reason you're preparing the oil is to kindle the menorah, so the menorah gives light. So it should be for illumination, not for a luminary, not to be a source of light, but to be a light. So why does it use the term kasis lama'er? Yeah, but was it the source of light? Was it? It gave light. Right, but what did it give? It gave light. So why does it say lama'ir to be a luminary as opposed to laha'ir to shine? And a fourth question, Gam tzarich lahavin, the pasuk shalachir zenemar me'erev ad boker. In the very next verse, after the verse we opened the mimer with, it says that the menorah should be kindled and should burn me'erev ad boker, from evening till morning. And the menorah was lit in the afternoon, and it burned till the morning, and then was relit in the afternoon. So there was the menorah went from evening to morning. But in this verse it says, Lahalis ner tamid, it should be a constant flame, implying that the menorah was constantly burning, that the candles were constantly burning. So we need to understand, these are the four questions that we have on the verse. These questions, some of them are addressed by other commentaries, they give other interpretation, but obviously these questions are leading us to a deeper, mystical, Chassidic insight into the verse. Okay. Chapter 2. So the previous Rebbe explains in his famous discourse, Mamorei Hayudua, his famous discourse entitled the Kibbutz Yehudim, which he said on Purim Katan Tavrish Peizayin. The Rebbe calls this a famous discourse because Tavrish Peizayin in 1927 was the year that the previous Rebbe was arrested and imprisoned for defying the communists and spreading Judaism in Russia. Now, the communists had been, the Yevseksia had been on his case for a very long time, and they had spies everywhere. And Purim, the previous Rebbe at that time was living in Leningrad, Petersburg, then Leningrad. And at this time, during the Purim time, during Adar, the previous Rebbe was in Moscow. And in Moscow, he had held Farbrengens, public gatherings, which in itself I think were illegal. And at them, he spoke openly about defying the Russian government. They specifically spoke about the decree that all Jews had to put their kids in their public schools, in the Russian government-controlled schools, where they'd obviously be indoctrinated, and where they'd be forced really away from their Jewish tradition. And the previous Rebbe called on his followers and all Jews to defy their orders and to give their kids a proper Jewish education. In fact, at one point, one of these Farbrengens, the Rebbe said that he knows that there are people, he has spies that are here in the room, and he basically was looking them in the face and kind of challenging them and saying that they should be openly, that they should be defied. He was saying that quite openly. So the conversation at that time revolved a lot around Mesiras Nefesh, around self-sacrifice. How one has to have self-sacrifice for Jewish education and for maintaining Jewish values. And part of that was what he discussed in the discourse that he delivered on Purim Katan v'Kibbutz Yehudim. So the Rebbe calls it a famous discourse because it was famous that it made waves at the time throughout. Wherever anybody had heard about it, it made waves at the time. It was part of the lead up to his eventual arrest a few months later as well. Okay, so in his mimer he explains like this: Tetzaveh, and the Rebbe's mimer, our mimer here, this V'ata Tetzaveh, is going to be based on this mimer of the previous Rebbe. We're going to be referring back to it constantly. Okay. When we talk about commandments, we talk about mitzvahs, so we think of it as a commandment. God commands us to do X, Y, or Z. But there's another way of looking at commandments, at the mitzvahs, that a mitzvah is not from the word command, but from the term connection. That mitzvah has the same root as the word tzavta, which means a connection. And that's a different way of looking at mitzvahs, a different perspective. Is not that it's God's command to us, but God offering us a way to connect to Him. So we connect to God through the mitzvahs. God says, these are ways, methods through which you can connect to me. Just as in general, you talk about anytime you can do something for somebody else, you form a bond, a connection with them, where you're a total stranger, you have nothing to do with, they have no bearing, an impact on your life, and you have none on them. And then when they do something for you, do something for them, that forms a connection. So mitzvahs, one of the reasons it's called mitzvah, beyond just being a command, but in a deeper sense, it's because it's a connection with God. So the term tetzaveh, to command, really can also mean to connect, tzavta v'chibur. Connection and attachment. This is the meaning of Ata Tetzaveh B'nai Yisrael. You should command the people, not that you should command, but Moshe who mekasher mechaber as B'nai Yisrael, but that Moshe connects and binds the people with God. And through Moshe influencing the people, teaching the people, and therefore meaning that what is his function with the people? Connecting them with God, the infinite light, with God. By Moshe doing his job of connecting the people with God, Moshe himself is enhanced. Again, another connection to now the time that we're learning the Maimer now. We're in Parshas Balaischa, so we're going to bring we're going to explain this concept in the brackets here with a verse from this week's Parsha from Balaischa. The Moshe v'Yisrael hu hem dugmas reish v'regel. Moshe and the Jewish people are comparable to the head and the foot. Moshe, the leader of the people, if we look at the Jewish people as a whole, so we constitute, the Chazal say that we're kaima achas shlema, we're like one big body. And so you have the head of the body, you have the arms, the legs, the torso, and the leader of the people, the leader of the generation is referred to as the head. You have the Jewish leaders are referred to as Einei Eda, the eyes of the people. But Moshe is referred to as the head of the people. And there's a reference to this, an allusion to this in the Parsha. Like it says, Moshe says to God, when they're talking about the people demanded meat, and it was a whole, and Moshe was hesitant to give them meat. And Moshe says, 600,000 feet, the people that I am amongst in whose midst I am. So, well, it should be pairs, right? But that's the literal translation. Feet. What does it mean, feet? It doesn't mean feet. It really means more like foot soldiers. It means people, but he refers to people as ragli. And also, why does he say ragli, my feet? Because so in other words, he's referring to the people as his feet. That the people are the feet of Moshe. The Kol Yisrael Hem Raglaim de Moshe. A literal reading of this verse, ragli meaning just foot soldiers, people that have been traveling. The census of the travelers that you can evaluate that you can calculate by the feet. But he says a literal meaning is ragli, my feet. They're Moshe's feet. Moshe Horei Shalom. Moshe is the head of these people, of the people. Okay, Moshe, what does it mean that the people are Moshe's feet? Why does he refer to them as his feet? So, just as in a body, the feet take the head to places where it can't go on its own. So too is with Moshe and the Jewish people. So just as the feet, in the hierarchy of the human being, your head is on the top. Sits on the top. Also, structurally, you stand, your head is up on the top. That's because it's the highest point of the human being. The feet are the lowest, and that's why they're on the bottom. So, it's really the head that controls everything. The head controls the whole body. But, the head also needs the feet. So, even though it's the head that instructs the feet and where to go, but if the head wants to go somewhere, it can't get there without the feet. So, the feet contribute to the head as well. So, even though the head is the nerve center, that's the command center, that runs the whole show, but the head needs the feet. So just as a head needs feet to get it to where it needs to be, Moshe, to get where he wants to be, needs the people. And therefore he refers to them as his feet. But either way, the point is, we see that the people contribute and enhance Moshe. Moshe is enhanced by the people. That's why he refers to them as his feet. sheish meis elef ragli. Ha'amashar anochi bekirbay. This is why it says the 600,000 feet, and I am in their midst. Now, so we explained the idea of sheish meis elef ragli. We explained the idea of ragli, why he refers to them as his feet. That through these feet, meaning through the people, nimshach hagiloi de anochi bekirba shel Moshe. What does this mean? The second half of the verse, Asher anochi bekirba, I am among them. What does this mean? And it's also the terminology is a little complex, a little complicated, a little disjointed seeming. So he explains that through ragli, through my feet, they cause that anochi, meaning God, in his essence, is Bekir Boy, is now within Moshe. So Moshe has an enhanced connection with God, a deeper appreciation of God as a result. The Anoichi, God, is Bekir Boy in Moshe through what? Through Ragli, through the people. So how does Moshe cause that Anoichi, that God is Bekir Boy in him, in Moshe? It's through Sheish Me'el Self Ragli, through the people. Okay. So that was in the brackets. That just is an aside to show us how the people enhance Moshe, how the people contribute to Moshe. So we're saying, because we're trying to get to Va'ata Tetzaveh v'Yikroilecha, that Moshe commands and the people give to them. This is then the meaning of the first half of the verse, that Moshe should command the people, and they shall bring the oil to Moshe, so that Al Yidei Moshe Yitzaveh through Moshe connecting the people with God. Through this they bring the oil to Moshe. They cause an increased light in Moshe, meaning that they a deeper, enhanced spiritual state that Moshe reaches and achieves as a result of the people. So in this paragraph, chapter 2, now we've answered the first two questions. Chapter 1, we asked 4 questions. Number 1, why does it say that Va'ata Tetzaveh, which is a departure from Tzav, and also Va'ata Tetzaveh seems to imply that Moshe is the one commanding? We said, what do you mean? God is the one who commands. Moshe just conveys the message. He's just the messenger. So what does it mean that Moshe is the commander? Number 2, we said that if we're telling you, the instruction in the verse is to prepare oil for the menorah in the temple. So that oil needs, if you want to tell us where its destination is, where it has to go, tell us to give it to Aaron. Why does it say V'Koilecha? Why is it being brought to Moshe? Then we asked 2 other questions. We asked, what does it mean? Kosis Lamoyer. Why does it say Lamoyer for the luminary? It should say Lahoyer, to shine, to give light. And the 4th question, why does it say in our verse that it's a constant flame when in the very next verse it says that the flame burns from evening to morning? So it seems to be inconsistent. So the first 2 questions are addressed and answered now in chapter 2. We explained that Va'ata Tetzaveh does in fact mean Moshe, but not that Moshe commands. Moshe is not the commander, God's the commander. But that Moshe is the connector. Va'ata Tetzaveh means that Moshe, you connect. You connect the people with God. And what happens when Moshe connects the people with God? When he fulfills his mission, his role of connecting people with God, through that, as V'Koilecha, they bring oil to Moshe. Meaning that Moshe is enhanced as a result of his contributing to the people. Connecting the people with God. Are we doing the time? Okay. Let's take a look at footnote 8 before we continue with chapter 3. Footnote 8. Cain who we're talking about where it says that Moshe connects the people with Ein Sof, with God. So the Rebbe says in note 8, he points out like this, and he's sort of planting a seed for something we're going to get to later, which is that this is in the Va'ata Tetzaveh of Tafresh Ayin Tes, this is the term that it says that Moshe connects the people with Ein Sof, with the light, but he says that V'divrei HaMaschal Zeh Tafresh Pei Zayin B'tchilasei V'alderech Zeh in Tetzaveh Tekasher B'nei Yisrael Ve'ein Moshe V'Ein Sof. In the Maimer, the previous Rebbe, however, when he talks about Va'ata Tetzaveh, because the previous Rebbe begins his Maimer with the pasuk V'kibel HaYehudim, and then goes into an analysis of our verse of Va'ata Tetzaveh. And in his Maimer, the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't mention that Moshe connects the people with God, with Ein Sof. He just says he connects the people. Tekasher B'nei Yisrael. Va'ata Tetzaveh means that Moshe connects the people. Now, obviously, it would seem, who is he connecting them with? He's connecting them with God. But in his Maimer, he doesn't say that. And the Rebbe says, that we could say that in the previous Rebbe's Maimer, he's talking about the reason he omits what his predecessors write, what his father writes in his Maimer, that Moshe connects the people with God. He leaves out that obvious conclusion to the sentence, and he just says Moshe connects the people because he wants to point out that Moshe is not only connecting them with God, but he's also connecting them with each other. What that means, we'll learn already later in chapter 11. But the Rebbe is just sort of planting that seed, pointing out that already in the previous Rebbe's Maimer, it's significant that he omits that term, who Moshe is connecting them with. He just says that he connects them. And we'll get to that towards the end of the Maimer. Okay. Let's go, chapter 3. So Levi is... to explain this, to explain what it means that Moshe connects the people with God. So he explains in his Maimer, the previous Rebbe explains, Moshe Rabbeinu Nikra Raya Mehemna. Moshe Rabbeinu is called, in Kabbalah, he's called the Raya Mehemna, the faithful shepherd. What is a Raya Mehemna, faithful shepherd? So Shnei Pirushim is that there are actually two meanings. Number one is Shehu Raya Neman Shal Yisrael. Number one is that he's the trusted shepherd of the Jewish people. He's the one we can rely on. He's reliable and trustworthy, that he will shepherd the people, he will take care of the people. That's number one. And another reason he's called Raya Mehemna, another explanation of the term Raya Mehemna, is that he actually shepherds the faith of the people. So one is that he is a trusted shepherd. And another explanation of Raya Mehemna is that he shepherds faith. Right? Raya Mehemna, he's the trusted shepherd, or Raya, he shepherds Mehemna faith. Two ways of understanding it. What does that mean? What does it mean that Moshe shepherds the faith of the people? A shepherd, you can have a shepherd that's trustworthy. You give him entrust your flock of sheep with him, and you know that you're going to get them all back. They're all going to be fed. They're going to be taken care of. They're all going to be happy and protected. That's a faithful shepherd, a trusted shepherd. What does it mean, though, that he shepherds faith? A shepherd nurtures the sheep by feeding them. What does it mean that he shepherds faith? Because the the idea that we know that every Jew naturally has a faith in God, believes in God. Jews are called maminim b'nei maminim. Believers, the children of believers. It's in our DNA. The Gemara tells us that it's in our DNA to believe in God. That's our natural state. So if so, why do we need somebody to shepherd faith, to feed us faith? What is he feeding us faith? We already have that faith. But it's just that the faith that the people have naturally is b'chinas makif. It's abstract. It's sort of transcendent. It doesn't penetrate. It doesn't permeate their conscious selves. The fact that Moshe shepherds the people with faith, it's just as food. You eat food, you ingest it. Same thing as Moshe takes this faith that we have and feeds it to us. We ingest it, it becomes something that's part of us. What does that mean? A thief could stand about ready to break into a home, and before he breaks in to steal, he prays to God that he should be successful. So the Gemara notes the irony. What does that mean? That he's about to break into a home. He believes in God. That's why he's praying. Not only does he believe in God, he believes in the power of prayer and that God listens to his prayer. Not only does he believe that God listens to his prayer, but he believes that God will actually answer his prayer. So that for him to be successful, he prays to God that God should grant him success. He should be successful. So this is a person who has a very, very strong faith in God, not just an abstract God, but a God that's intimately involved in his life, that gets involved, and that orchestrates what goes on in this world.
But he still wants to take out.
On the other hand, he's still stealing. So he's praying to God to intervene and do something that goes against what God says, one of the 10 Commandments, not to steal. So how could that be? How is it possible that you can pray to God on the one hand, believing that God will answer your prayer and will grant you success? So you have a belief in God that's involved, that's personal, that helps you, that listens to you, and at the same time do something that goes against God. Why is that? How can you do that? So does this guy believe? Does he believe in God or does he not believe in God? So could you say that he believes in a God that doesn't believe that the stealing is bad? He believes in God, but he doesn't believe that God gave us that commandment of not to steal. No, he knows that God said not to steal. Any person who's going to pray to God and believes God can help them will believe that very same God doesn't want them stealing. And yet, so the explanation is because their belief, their faith is abstract. The faith is faith, but they need to make a living in this world. That's real to them. so they can rely on their faith, the abstract faith that they have in God, to pray to God for them for their success. But when it comes to making their living, here already they're not going to rely on God's help to help them make a living in legal and moral and ethical and ethical means. They're going to do it in their own way. So they have faith, but that faith is abstract. It's makif. It hovers over them, but doesn't affect them. And that's the role of Moshe, to feed faith to the people, that the faith should then be internalized and should be something that informs them on a conscious level. So that their faith in God, that's abstract, now becomes real to the point that they're not going to steal, because God is ever present and watching over them and with them, and so they can't steal in His presence. So that's the meaning of that Moshe feeds them faith, nurtures the faith of the people. This is the meaning of the passage of the Zohar, who says that this higher emunah, faith, is nourished and fed through Moshe. This means that Moshe takes this emunah, the la'ela, this high emunah, this faith in God that remains distant or abstract, that doesn't inform your conscious behavior, and he feeds it, meaning he causes you to internalize it, that faith becomes internalized within you, so that you start living in accordance with that faith. Okay. The Maimer continues that when we say that Moshe is the Rai Mehemna, the shepherd, who now we're working with a more mystical, a deeper interpretation of Rai Mehemna, the one who nurtures the faith, who feeds the faith of the people, feeds them their faith, that it should be internalized. This is true not only of Moshe, but the Moshe of every generation. The leaders of the people in every generation are the ones who strengthen the faith of the people in their generation. Is that the emunah, that their faith should also be internalized, should be something that is consciously informative and guiding them in their lives. For example, Mordechai of the Purim story, who was the Moshe of his generation, like the Medrash says, the Medrash singles out Mordechai, of all the great leaders, it singles out Mordechai. It says Mordechai in his generation was like Moshe in his generation. So we see that Mordechai was the Moshe of his generation. That Shagam Bisman Hagzeiras Haman, that also during the time of the decree of Haman, when observing the commandments and study of Torah was required, Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice, so he gathered people publicly, he created public gatherings where he encouraged the people and inspired them to remain strong in their study of Torah and doing mitzvahs. After explaining at length in his Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, that Moshe and the extension of Moshe in every generation strengthen the faith of the people. He explains the meaning of the third question that we had. Why the verse says shemen l'ma'er, oil crushed, olives crushed to be a luminary as opposed to give light, is because Shebizman Hagolus, in the time of exile, where people are broken, crushed, they're crushed by exile. Through that they reach the source of light, they get to the essence from which the light stems. So we have to understand the Shaykh is that Pirush because Lamor Lamavur by my Melfinisa. Shemoisha Vispashtusa Delay Shebachol Dora, Zonam Farnis Amushti Bepinimis. So we have to understand the connection between the explanation that crushing the oil so that it brings you to the source of light. We have to understand the connection between that and what it says earlier, that Moshe is the one who nurtures the faith of the people. It seems that there are two things. There's the idea that Moshe nurtures, Moshe and the extension of Moshe, the Moshe of every generation nurtures the faith of the people so that the faith becomes something internalized within them and becomes very real and informs them in their lives. That's one thing. Then he goes on to explain that through self-sacrifice, one reaches the essence of light. Through self-sacrifice, which is implied in the concept of crushing, being crushed, being squeezed. during a time of being squeezed, the person, through that self-sacrifice, could reach the essence. We didn't explain what any of this means yet. We're out of time now. We'll get into this a little bit more, Mitzvah Hashem, in the next class. But so they seem like two separate things. How does one lead into the other? And a little bit more explanation we'll give when we move on to chapter 4.